Hello, I'm Troy Abels from Hanford, California, and you are listening to Gospel Tangents.
It's the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. What's the difference between Protestants and Evangelicals? Mormons are often clueless about that, so I had to ask an evangelical, Steven Pynakker. He's the host of Mormon Book Reviews. What is the difference? So this was a joint production that me and Steve did back in March, and I'm releasing it here on Gospel Tangents, so we'll find out more about those differences. Check out our conversation.
That's fascinating. So here you are, you're in the buckle of the Bible Belt, and you're encountering all these evangelicals and fundamentalists. I believe that sounds like you would have been in the Bob Jones University territory. Yeah. So that's those are a notorious group. They're kind of viewed with the evangelicals and them kind of view each other with suspicion.
Oh, really?
Because they're so far out there. I actually attended Christian schools, so we actually used some of Bob Jones' curriculum in our textbooks. Wow. So I know them. I'm acquainted with them. Did you ever have any run-ins with them?
You know, I never did. Spartanburg was it was close to. I'm trying to remember if it was Bob Jones in Greenville. I can't remember.
Yeah, I know it was in that general vicinity.
Yeah, because Greenville, Spartanburg are close together. Our zone, we had a zone, but I was more. There was I think a Radford College. They were mostly college. It was more of a college town, and I didn't really run into any Bob Jonesers, but we were sure familiar with them. We knew who they were. So
they're notorious and infamous with us too. So did you baptize any evangelicals?
Oh yeah. So it's funny because they're like, you shouldn't count how many you did. My mission was kind of tough in that I only baptized like one person the first 18 months. And that was a real struggle for me because all the guys that I came out with were baptizing all over the place. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And I think it was kind of, once again, kind of what I was talking about. I enjoyed the debate and I enjoyed the contention, and it was fun to bash. And I didn't do it in a loving manner. And like I said, that Elder Griffiths, taught me how to use the scriptures in a loving manner. And the last 6 months, I had a lot more success, and we baptized quite a few. Honestly, I'm trying to remember if any of them would call themselves an evangelical. I will say this, at least and I don't mind using the term Mormon. I know what our prophet said, but that's fine with me. I don't care. But from a Mormon point of view, I don't even really understand. Like you got your Catholics, you got your Protestants, you've got your evangelicals, and I don't really understand what's the difference between a Protestant and evangelical. And I don't. It just seems like the evangelicals are the more missionary-minded, and the Protestants may not be. Is that a good definition?
Yeah. So I think the best way to look at it is that within Protestantism, every single Protestant denomination has what you could call an evangelical / charismatic wing. Okay, some evangelicals are charismatics, all charismatics are evangelicals. And so you'll have churches within, even the Church of England, you have evangelical churches in the Church of England, the Episcopal Church, or Anglican church as they call it in England. So throughout all of Protestantism, you have this evangelical streak. Now, what essentially happened is, like, for instance, that the Protestant churches that Joseph was dealing with, I would say they were definitely evangelical. Okay. So the mainline churches were all what we would call evangelical today. As modernism entered into the church in going into the 19th into the early 20th century, what you had was a modernist, fundamentalist, or conservative split in every single church. And so you then have mainline Presbyterians, which is Presbyterian Church, the Evangelical Presbyterian Church, which is the liberal one. But then you have the Presbyterian Church in America, which is conservative and evangelical. And you have like that same pattern in almost every denomination where you have a liberal mainline church and then its conservative offshoot. So they might still have Lutheran in their name or Presbyterian, but the mainline has those names, but then there's evangelical ones that are very similar in their name. And then from that, you had the charismatic renewal movement, which happened in the 60s and 70s. And that caused kind of a different parachurch paradigm shift, where then it went from being associated with a denomination to individual churches starting on their own and maybe affiliating with each other in loose confederations, or those parachurches starting smaller churches and growing them throughout the country, like Calvary Chapel did in the 70s, which is big in California and such. So that's kind of the difference, is that Protestant is the old line. We call it the main line, but really it's the old line. And now evangelicalism is the ascendant part of Protestant Christianity. And evangelical is appropriate because they're trying to evangelize. Does that kind of clarify?
And when you say charismatic, I think of Pentecostals speaking in tongues, people with kind of raucous, clapping in church, and maybe drums and guitars and things like that. Whereas Protestant mainline, would be more subdued worship services. Is that kind of a fair breakdown of how that is?
It's all those conventions are breaking down. And basically what happens is, even with your mainline churches, you have a situation where the evangelical, the traditional churches now have contemporary service and traditional service every Sunday morning. So many of them are doing that. I guess the biggest difference is that Pentecostals came out of Southern California, Azusa Street, around 1906. And these were basically poor people, Black people, as well as Armenian. The Kardashian family comes from the Pentecostal movement, just so you know, and I can actually give you inside information on that. But essentially, the Armenian population migrated to Southern California and joined forces with basically the lower destitute people of society. It was interracial. It was not segregated, and that's where the Pentecostal movement came out of. And they started their own set of denominations, which can be called Pentecostal denominations. Then in the 60s and 70s, you had the charismatic movement. My father was a chapter president of Full Gospel Businessmen's Association, and they were very big in pushing the interdenominational speaking in tongues and charismatic and the gifts of the Spirit in all of the Protestant churches, also the Catholic Church. So my dad's area also included South Bend, Indiana, and he would have these Catholic priests praying over people, speaking in tongues. One Catholic priest would go, he'd be praying over people, and he'd have a cigarette hanging out of his mouth while he was praying for people. So it was a real mishmash, kind of like Kirtland, 1831, 1832, a lot of stuff going on, right? And so that's how you differentiate. The charismatics come out of the Protestant movement. The Pentecostals are their own kind of beginning thing around 1906.
Yeah, it's some of the divisions still.
Oh, it's very confusing. But then, of course, as I've been delving into the Restoration, guess what I found?
Yeah, it can get confusing with Mormons too.
Exactly. Yep. So here we are. We've kind of painted a picture of Rick Bennett and who he is, the math geek and the jock, the well-educated man. And of course, I just want to throw this in just briefly. One of your jobs is that you are in the sports broadcasting industry. Mm-hmm. You want to speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. My brother was really into TV sports. He was a producer at Fox and NBC affiliate here in Salt Lake City, and ESPN came to town one time and said, "Can you help us out for a football game, University of Utah?" And he was also a DJ. And the night that they wanted him to come, he couldn't because he was working. So he asked me if I would go in his place, and I'm like, "Are you kidding? ESPN? This is awesome!" And so I went in his place, and that was 25 years ago. And I've been doing it ever since. It was funny because it wasn't looking to do it, and it was just fun. But I run the little scoreboard on your screen, flag, 1st and 10, 2nd and 8, jazz on a 10-2 run, whatever. So I do lots of sports. I've done water polo. I did a lot of work for the Pac-12, some work for the Utah Jazz, CBS, NBC, ABC, whoever comes to town. So occasionally I'll do some out of town stuff. When I was doing ESPN's kind of come back, and so, at least with me, I used to do a lot of college football, and I've been to Florida State, I've been to Rutgers, I've been to Michigan, the Big House, and so I mean, for me as a sports fan, it was a dream come true to get paid to watch sports. Are you kidding me? This is awesome. So,
Okay, so Rick, you have this extraordinarily fulfilling life, it sounds like to me. And of course, before we get into where we're heading, tell me a little bit about your family, wife and kids and all that.
so yeah, I was a late bloomer. I didn't get married until I was in my 30s, but I've been married about 20 years, so I guess you do the math. But yeah, I got 3 kids, 2 in high school and then 1 in 6th grade. He's almost junior high. So it's funny, my 2 oldest, sometimes they'll be working and it'll just be my wife and my youngest son and me for dinner, and it's like, what happened? Where is everybody? So they're growing up, and my oldest, he's 18. He'll be graduating from high school here in a few months, and so it looks like he's going to go on a mission, but he hasn't put in his papers yet. He wants to do a triathlon before his mission, which is pretty impressive. He's on the track team and swim team and cross country team, so he's a much better, faster runner than I ever was. I only did cross country for about a year and focused more on basketball, which was probably, if I wanted to play, that was the wrong move. But I like basketball more. But yeah, so he's and I'm a terrible swimmer. He's a much better swimmer than me. So, but yeah, so then my kids are PB and J, Preston, Brandon, Jessica, which we didn't really do on purpose, but
That's great. Oh, that's awesome to have that, and you weren't even planning on it. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a future Iron Man in your family. That is pretty cool, dude.
Yeah.
So hopefully he gets a mission to a place where there's a lot of terrain and he can practice and everything.
He'll go to Hawaii. You watch. No, he's been taking a bunch of Chinese classes, so maybe he'll go to China. Who knows? But we'll see.
Wow, boy, what a time to go there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Steve Pynakker, host of Mormon Book Reviews. In our next conversation, we're going to talk about how I got the name Gospel Tangents. We were standing there talking, kind of debating this, and I don't know that anybody even would ever know, and the one guy made a quip, yeah, this is the Gospel Tangents class out in the hall, and I just thought that was the coolest name. And so that's kind of where I got the name. If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please subscribe for just $5 a month at patreon.com/gospeltangents, and you can hear the entire interview before everybody else. If you'd like to watch the entire video for just $8 a month, you can either subscribe on YouTube, Patreon, or my website, gospeltangents.com. Just click the yellow subscribe button, and I'll add you to our Gospel Tangents Insiders group so that you can see entire videos. For those interested in a PDF transcript, you can subscribe at either Patreon or on my website. For just $10 a month, I'll send you a PDF as soon as it's complete. If you'd like a copy of the paperback as well as a PDF, just sign up for $20 a month at either Patreon or my website, gospeltangents.com. Of course, you can buy individual transcripts at amazon.com and just do a search for Gospel Tangents interview, and you can see all the things that we have there. Don't forget to support Gospel Tangents with an awesome t-shirt like one of these. You can subscribe at Apple Podcasts at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents. Get our latest updates at facebook.com/gospeltangents. Also, you can get our Twitter updates at Gospel Tangents. Click here to subscribe, here for a transcript, and over here we've got more of our great videos. Thanks again.